Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the toughest questions a manager can face. How do you keep people motivated when their jobs are some of the most emotionally demanding in our society? We're about to open up the manager's toolkit and find some answers.
So this really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If you're leading a team in a field like child safeguarding or family support, you know the deal. The emotional weight is just huge. Burnout is a very real constant threat, but the work, well, it's absolutely vital. So where on earth do you even start?
Okay, so let's start with a real classic. Our first tool is a foundational framework for understanding what makes people tick, and it comes from the psychologist Abraham Maslow.
At its heart, Maslow's idea is actually pretty simple. He saw us all as wanting beings. We're always striving for something. And what we want really just depends on what we already have. It's all about a natural progression.
In this image, it really captures that idea perfectly. Think about it like you're climbing a mountain. You can't just teleport to the summit, what Maslow called self-actualization. You have to secure your footing on all the levels below, one step at a time.
So how does this actually play out in the real world? Let's take a social work context. Right at the bottom, step one, you've got the basics, a fair salary for food and shelter. Then you move up to safety, not just knowing you have a job, but feeling psychologically safe enough to talk about a tough case. After that comes belonging, that sense of being part of a supportive team. Then we get to esteem, getting that positive feedback from your manager. And finally, you reach the peak, self-actualization, the chance to really make a creative, lasting impact. So if you're a manager, your job is to figure out which step your team member is on and give them what they need to climb to the next one.
But here's the kicker, and this is absolutely crucial for any manager to understand. Maslow said, a satisfied need is no longer a motivator. Think about that. If an employee feels secure in their job, offering them more security isn't going to fire them up. It's already checked off the list. You have to aim higher.
So that idea of constantly moving up the ladder, that brings us to our next tool. Because a guy named Frederick Herzberg came along, looked at what Maslow did, and said, I think there's a totally different way to look at this.
What Herzberg did was basically split the entire world of work into two separate buckets. On the left side, you've got what he called hygiene factors. Think of these as the basics: your salary, your working conditions, company rules. If these things are bad, people are definitely unhappy. But here's the really interesting part. Having great pay and a nice office doesn't actually motivate you. It just stops you from being dissatisfied. Now, on the right side, you have the motivators. This is the stuff that's core to the job itself. A sense of achievement, getting recognized for good work, feeling responsible. These are the things that light a fire under people and drive amazing performance.
And this right here, this is the real mind-bender in Herzberg's theory. He said the opposite of being dissatisfied isn't being satisfied, it's just not dissatisfied. It's like two totally separate scales. So as a manager, you're not just trying to move someone along one line from unhappy to happy. You've actually got two jobs to do. First, you have to fix all the hygiene stuff to get people to a neutral place of not dissatisfied. And only then can you start adding the motivators to get them to that satisfied and high-performing state.
Okay, let's make this super practical. Think about those safeguarding teams we mentioned. A massive dissatisfier for them is the constant emotional drain. That's a working condition. So what can a manager do? One technique is to bring in mandatory structured peer debriefs. This directly improves two key hygiene factors: the quality of supervision and interpersonal relations. Now, doing this won't magically make someone passionate about their job overnight, but it takes away a huge source of pain. It stops the bleeding and creates that stable foundation where the real motivators can actually start to grow.
All right, so we've had Maslow's rigid ladder and Herzberg's two-sided coin. Our third tool, which comes from Clayton Aldifer, gives us a model that's way more flexible and maybe, just maybe, a little more realistic about how humans actually work.
So what Aldifer did was take Maslow's 5 steps and streamline them into just 3 core categories. First up, we have existence needs. Think of these as the absolute fundamentals, the material stuff you need to survive. For someone working in family support, that's pretty clear: a decent salary that pays the bills and a safe office to come back to after a difficult visit.
Next up, Aldifer talks about relatedness needs, and this is all about our connections with other people, our place in the social environment. In a high-stress job like family support, having colleagues who get it and a manager who's got your back, that's not a nice-to-have, it's a lifeline. It's essential.
And his third category is growth needs. This taps into that deep-down desire we all have to get better at what we do, to develop our potential, and to feel like we're making a difference.
For that support worker, that could be the amazing feeling of finally mastering a new way to help a child open up. That's a powerful driver.
Now here's where Alderfer really breaks away from Maslow's strict one-step-at-a-time ladder. He said you can be working on more than one need at the same time. You could be motivated by needing a raise, that's an existence need, while also being fired up about a challenging new project, that's a growth need. It's not a straight line. It's much more dynamic. We can move between them.
But he also added this really fascinating idea called the frustration regression principle. So what if an employee is trying to satisfy that growth need, but they just keep hitting a wall? Maybe there's no budget for training or no new projects. Well, Alderfer said they might regress or slide back down and start to focus way more on relatedness needs, like wanting more team social events. So if you're a manager and you see that, don't just think they're being needy. It's probably a sign that a higher need is being blocked somewhere.
Okay, so we have these three really powerful frameworks: Maslow's ladder, Hertzberg's two factors, Alderfer's flexible model. Now let's put them to the test. What happens when the goal isn't profit, but purpose?
And this is where things get really interesting. You look at this data and it kind of flips things on its head. Job satisfaction is actually higher in the public sector, even though we know things like pay, a classic hygiene factor, are often lower. So what's going on here?
And this quote really nails it. For people in these caring professions, it's the other stuff that becomes a huge motivator. It's the supportive relationships, that's Alderfer's relatedness, and the good teamwork. These things, these motivators, as Hertzberg would call them, become incredibly powerful drivers. Which brings us to the real key takeaway for any manager in these fields. The primary driver is what we call intrinsic satisfaction. It's not about the paycheck or the corner office. It's about the work itself. It's that deep personal connection to the mission, the interest in the job, the feeling of personal growth. That's the fuel that gets people through the toughest of days.
And so all of this leaves us with one final crucial question for you as a leader. Armed with these tools, what's your first move? Do you start by fixing the problems, the hygiene factors, just to get to neutral? Or do you go straight for building those powerful motivators? The path you choose could make all the difference. Thanks for joining this explainer.